Hey everybody, welcome back to Superhuman Customs. We're going to do something a little bit different this week. We are going to customize an action figure. It's going to be a very old action figure. Now I've had this guy for years. You know, it's going to be a lot of fun to just kind of play around with him. You can see, I mean, he's been damaged since I bought him. Like, this is from when I first got him out of the package. And this was literally 20 years ago. So it's going to be fun to just kind of play around. But I've been getting a lot of comments on the videos about kind of talking about why I do what I do sometimes and what I've learned over the last 6 months since I started customizing. So we're going to kind of use this as a chance for us to do that. So what we're going to do with this guy, this is an Electro Superman from the, I think it was like 1997 when this came out. This toy actually came out in, I think, 99 is when I bought it. And as you can see, it has some damage from when it was literally in the box. What we're going to do is we're going to take the nice blue pearl paint that we've got here, and we're going to go over him, and then we're going to spray him. So we're going to use him as kind of an example. So what I want to start out with before we get into him is just kind of talk about some of the things that I've done and the tools that I've used and why I've used them and what I've learned through using them. So when I started out, I had used shoe polish as basically a wash on some figures, and that works all right. This wash, the Vallejo Game Wash, has easily proven to be my favorite. And what it does, as you can see here on the Superman, so obviously the black here, this was the matte black craft paint, but all of the details in here are from this wash, and they turn out really subtle and really nice and not blotchy at all. So that's become my favorite. So when I started, I was using, shoe polish, which you can use. I won't use it anymore, but I used it. And I was using craft paint, just simple $1.50 from Hobby Lobby craft paint. Now, what I found about the craft paint is that it goes on thicker. It works pretty well for regular plastics, but the thicker you put it on, the more likely it is to chip off. So in the example of the Azrael Batman from a few months ago, where I used this blue pearl paint, I was able to get that on really thinly. It's just beautiful because it matched his colors so nicely. So I was able to put that on super thin. It gave him the sheen that we all wanted him to have. It wasn't sticky at all. It was about as perfect as I could have got it. I was incredibly happy with how that turned out. And that was just with this cheapo craft paint. So that worked out really nicely. But if you are using this on softer plastics or in thicker amounts, it's not going to work as well. And I'll show you an example. So this is one of my early customs. I did this in, it would have been June. It was over Father's Day weekend when I made this Ronan Kent figure. And he was my second major figure that I had done. And I used only craft paint on him. It was an experimentation. Now what I found is that he entirely needed to be repainted from top to bottom. This was originally, you can tell from the tattered cape, this was an infected Superman from, when he was like the Joker. So he was completely painted using craft paints. And what I found is that because I had to go on so thick, it would scrape off. I could even use my finger and scrape it off, which I definitely did not want to do. Well, I then found out about these guys, about glazes. And this one in particular is what I've been using. And with this, I realized it needed to have a seal, needed the sealant, which I had heard about, but I had never used. So I took him and I sprayed him with the sealant because I thought that having him be shiny would be awesome, and it turned out awesome. And so now he's in much better shape. He doesn't scrape anymore. I can't scrape it off with my finger. If I took like a needle or something, I could do it, but you could do that with regular toys from the store. If they got paint, you could take a needle and you could scrape off the paint. So it wasn't it is by no means an indictment of this process. It worked pretty well. And the great thing is that not only do you have these types of sprays with a clear gloss, but you also have a matte finish as well, which isn't shiny. And I'm going to be getting one of these next week in the matte so that I can use that as well. Because I really do enjoy the craft paints. They go on really nicely, but I just don't want them to come off. I want them to, these are toys, and I want them to still be toys. And the way to do that is to make it so that they don't scrape off. So with that Ronin, it worked out very, very well. Now, I've shown you these paints before, and I've used them several times. These are model paints. So for models, they're not made specifically for, I mean, the plastics, the models are going to be plastics, but they're very specific. They were also very cheap, but these have not worked out quite as well. They work pretty well for hard plastics, but for soft plastics, they remain sticky forever after. The example is Doomsday right here. So I love this Doomsday, but I used those greens because I was like, I had them and I wanted to see how it would work on here. And this is the thinner plastic. It remained sticky forever after. I eventually sprayed it with the glaze and that stopped it. It's not sticky anymore. But it was a little bit frustrating because it would literally, weeks after, it would come off on my fingers. And I did not like that. Doomsday is also another good example of the craft paints because I painted all of these in the white and the gray and all that stuff. Well, after my unfortunate explosion of my glass case, which I am yet to replace, I bumped it and it totally came off one of these spikes right here because it was just the craft paint. So what I did is I used another tool that I've really liked that I know a lot of other people haven't really used or experimented with, and that is fabric paint. You guys have seen me use it a little bit. I really like fabric paint because it is plastic. It is just straight up a plastic paint. So when it dries, it's plastic. It takes a lot longer to dry. If you're going to put it on thick, you're going to need at least 24 hours before it's dry. But this stuff is great. It goes on thick, so if you need a thick color, it works beautifully, and it's not going to come off because it's plastic. It adheres really, really well, just as well as any paint that you would find on an actual action figure at the store. So what I did with the Doomsday is that's what I used, and then I washed over the top, and it is tight. Like, it will not. I can actually try and peel it off, and it doesn't come off. So that worked out great. So yeah, fabric paints are another great tool that I've used. Now, when it comes to spray paints, I've used a couple different spray paints. I've used regular spray paint, and that, almost like the model paints, tends to be sticky on softer plastics. And with McFarlane's, they have a lot of soft plastic. That's how they are able to do what they do. They have some soft plastic on there, so they don't have a lot of paint apps. Well, this Tamiya color has been the best spray paint that I've used. It is specifically for plastics. I used it on my Future State Superman. Turned out absolutely spectacular. And this has been my favorite. So this would be something really good for if you are spray painting toys, get the ones that are for plastic. It works. Also, the Vallejos and the Citadel paints have worked out really, really nicely too. They go on thinner, and so you have to use more coats, but they go on better than the craft paints. They are more expensive. Like, I think this one was like $10. So they are more expensive. But they go a little bit goes a long way. Like, I've used this for a lot of stuff, and I've used like a tiny little bit. So it's an investment in what it is that you're doing, but it's going to work out. It's going to be really, really good. So these have been great paints. So I've used all kinds of different tools and techniques to make all of these figures. And I've learned a lot of good stuff, and I've learned a lot of good techniques over that time. So hopefully in the coming weeks and months, I'm going to be able to show you more. But hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of why I've done some of the things I've done and how I've made them work. So for today's, with our Electro Superman, we're just going to use this Pearly. It's going to shine him up. I was thinking about using a glitter fabric paint over the white. I tested it on the back a little bit. I don't know if you can see it, but it literally did just look like glitter glue. I don't want this to be a spangled Superman, so I'm not going to do that. It was like, I'm going to run a test. So we're not going that route. But after I am done, I am going to spray him with this, which is going to make him even shinier and just look more, like an Electro Superman. So I think this is going to be just a fun little test. The reason I'm using the fabric paint is for the exact same reason that I used it for the Azrael Batman, is because since he is blue, I can put on a really thin coat and it's going to look spectacular. So let's get moving. Here we go. We're going to use the same blue and we're just going to go on. I'm just going for coverage right now, trying to get it, in as many places as possible. I'm not going to get close to the white just yet. Just going to try and get it, but you can already see how it's adding that metallic to it, which is what this guy needs. This is a fun way to just freshen up old toys. This is an old design, obviously, from the mid 90s, and it's not necessarily a beloved costume design of Superman's. There are different versions of it that are newer than this. This is an old version. And a lot of people won't touch their old toys. They'll be like, oh, well, I'm going to sell this later. It's going to be worth something in a gazillion years. I honestly don't care. The chances of any of these toys being worth any real money is incredibly slim because there's so many of them. Maybe in 100 years, I don't know. Maybe my kids will want to, they'll be mad at me because I painted a couple of these. But for me, these are mine. They're mine. I want to do with them as I will. I want to make them look cool. And so I don't worry about that sort of stuff. If you're in this hobby merely as an investment, well, you're probably going to be disappointed. So I would say don't worry about it. Just do it for the enjoyment and enjoy it. Let's get a little bit closer in here and you can see it just immediately starts to add that shine to it. And again, I'm keeping this nice and thin. This is not going on thick. That's why it works so well with this craft paint, is that it is not a thick coat. It is nice and thin because this is blue, so it's going on the blue and it's able to add the shine without, worrying about it scraping off or getting sticky. That's what's great about it. Now, every time I paint one of these guys and I get to the edge, I always talk about letting the paint lead. So you don't get up against the white with the brush, you get up against it with the paint. And that allows you to get right up close and touch the other coat of paint without leaving any blotches, because the paint is thick enough that it will lead the brush. So don't worry about getting right up against it. Just take a thick cut of paint, get it right up in there, and you can see it goes right up to the edge and it works out really, really nicely. So I've kind of got most of the front done. Again, it's subtle, but you can see how it shines, especially when we do the side-by-side, you'll be able to see the difference. So what I do is generally, I'll hold on to one part like this so I can have freedom to move around. And then once I get in here, I'll use a thinner brush, obviously. But I can tell in the light that it's sparkling, and that's what I'm after. Let's go on to the S here in the middle, and after 20 years, I'm finally going to fix this smudge. There was a little black smudge here too, as you saw earlier. I took a little bit of fabric paint and fixed that because it was going to take longer to dry. So I'm just going to go in here and do what I do. I'm going to let the paint lead up to the edges, and I'm going to fill in these spots. Obviously, with the detail work, you can use the magnifying glass, which is what I'll do in a minute. It's just for the filming purposes. I like to just kind of show you guys the beginning here. And remember, when you catch something on an edge, just get it quick with your finger, wipe it off. No harm, no foul. These magnifying glasses are quite cheap. I think I spent $12 on this one at Hobby Lobby. Definitely worth it, because with this detail work stuff, you need to have it. Your eyes I have really good eyes, but you can't get close enough to make a difference. So pick one up. It's going to make your life so much easier. We're going to add a little bit of dry brush with this blue on his hair. It's not going to do a whole lot, but I want to just darken it a little bit and add a little bit of sheen. So I'm just using the same brush, and probably I'll go over it a couple of times just to darken it enough and give it a little bit of that shine. Okay, one thing that's always bugged me about this character is these little holes. So I'm going to take some fabric paint. Yes, fabric paint. I'm going to cover them up. Just that simple. There we go. See, it makes a little bit of difference. Just in there. I like it.
All right, let's spray them. Get them all nice and shiny. Go around to the back. Get them sprayed there too.
And there we go. Simple enough. He looks great. I love the shine to him. I love how the blue just makes it so it sparkles. As you can see, there were some details here. There were seams originally here because this toy is different. This, you know, being an older toy, this one was made differently than how they were in the past. And so there were some seams right here, but there's not anymore because I was able to take that fabric paint and fill those in. So he just looks more solid. He looks better than he ever has. Let's take a look at the side by side. You can really see the difference here in just the color, the sheen of the paint. It looks really, really great. So I hope that this video has helped you to just get a couple of ideas for your own stuff and see just how easy it is to just do simple things and really change a figure for the better. So get out there, get collecting, get customizing, turn some figures into your own characters, do whatever it is that you like, have fun, show it off. I'll see you next week.